Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Good. Can I ask you a question?
Of course. You and me, bosom buddies, we share everything. What do you need to know, my pal?
What is your favorite Wes Anderson movie?
My favorite, let's see. So
we've seen some of these together. I remember we saw, what's the one on the little island with all the Weeblos?
Moonrise Kingdom.
Moonrise Kingdom. Exactly. We saw that together.
That's right. We did. We saw Moonrise Kingdom together. And the thing is, I really fell in love with Wes Anderson with Royal Tenenbaums. So of course you want to say that that's like the one for you. But if I really look deep in my heart, I think it's The Fantastic Mr. Fox.
The Fantastic Mr. Fox is a truly amazing movie.
It's incredible, but I think because of I know the reason you're asking, and presumably anyone who's read the title knows why you're asking. So if you're asking me my favorite live action Wes Anderson film, I'm going to say that it's the Grand Budapest Hotel. I love the Grand Budapest Hotel, and it's travel related, even better.
Yeah. No, that is a really good answer. Ultimately, I'm still stuck with Rushmore.
Rushmore.
Yeah. It has always spoke to me in so many ways. And I just think it is so funny and so smart and really looks like his first film. It's like he did a movie before called Bottle Rocket, which doesn't really have this sort of Wes Anderson aesthetic we're going to talk about today with the colors and the symmetrical images and things like that. And so Rushmore feels like you're watching this very fresh thing happening, and that is Wes Anderson.
I mean, man, just talking about it here, what an oeuvre! My God.
I know. And that Amex commercial, I mean, it really rounds it out.
Well, and there is another great travel related one, which is, what's the one?
The Darjeeling Unlimited.
The Darjeeling Unlimited. Exactly right. Yeah. That one's great. And I believe there's a new one coming soon called The French Dispatch, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I haven't seen the trailer.
I think it's the same cast of characters you expect, and it's coming out sometime this year.
Well, this is exciting. We get a new Wes film because today
do we have Wes Anderson on the show?
No, the next best thing. We have
Rick Steves. Rick Steves is coming on the show.
Well, Rick Steves, fingers crossed. We're coming up on 100 episodes here. I imagine things are happening.
I've been working hard. Things are happening. I'm working the network. I'm pulling the levers. I'm making calls. I'm sending emails. Ryan, you can believe me that I am putting in the hours and effort.
Yeah, no, I can tell from the many restraining orders that you have received that you are really persistent. And I think
so why are you asking me about Wes Anderson?
Well, today on the pod, we have a really exciting guest. We have Wally Koval, who is the founder of Accidentally Wes Anderson, which is one of my favorite Instagram accounts.
Absolutely. I know it very well. I know it solely through Instagram, though I know there's a book out, and I'm anxious to pick it up soon. And I see recently that he's traveling the world looking for more accidentally Wes Anderson looking shots.
Yeah, it's fun because we talk about how he sources the content, how he came up with the idea, like what exactly is a Wes Anderson look. We talk a bit about the book. I mean, there's just a lot going on. It's a really vibrant community.
But for anyone who hasn't looked at it, how would you describe the idea behind this Instagram account? How did he become this influencer?
Yeah, it is basically, finding and sourcing pictures and stories that are very unique and sort of quote unquote Wes Anderson-like, accidentally Wes Anderson. So they're colorful, they're vibrant, they're quirky, they're interesting, they're symmetrical. And it's a really, you constantly make fun of my Instagram. You say things like, stop trying to be accidentally Wes Anderson.
Well, I have noticed that since you conducted the interview, every post is, Ryan trying to be accidentally Wes Anderson.
It is accidentally Wes Anderson.
I think it's intentionally accidentally Wes Anderson. I mean, you went to Hartford, Connecticut. You found every little, twee house that they've ever built in Hartford, Connecticut.
There are a lot of twee houses in Hartford, Connecticut. Who knew? But Hartford is a very AWA place, I think.
Now, I just want to be sure that I understand, though, because not only is Accidentally Wes Anderson an interesting account, a must follow if you are on Instagram, but Ryan, how is it travel related?
Well, because he actually tells stories of all these sort of strange places. So it's not just a visual, but they are telling stories of interesting buildings and strange locations and unusual sites, and trying to find sort of the what makes them unique besides the look, and who are some of the people that have sort of populated these interesting locations. So it is inspiring. Like if you go through Accidentally Wes Anderson, you're going to see places that you've never heard of, famous places. You're going to see little towns. We talk a bit about how you can find really interesting things, within 30 miles of your house. Like we talk about going into page 9 of TripAdvisor. Really deep.
I do feel that this is one of those accounts that you follow it enough, you do start to view a walk down the street differently, because it really, as you're saying, it's stuff that you used to walk right by. You kind of look at some of the details, some of the woodwork, some of the color choices, and it really makes being out there exploring the world and shooting with your iPhone camera much more exciting.
Yeah, and I think that he would appreciate you saying that, because that's what they're trying to do, to get you to look at everything around you in a slightly different way. And I was like, that's something that we always talk about. So I felt like it was a really good match. And it's fun because he is from the Delmarva Peninsula, like I am. So, I felt like a kinship with Wally.
Oh, he's a fellow Southern boy.
Well, he's in the Delaware. He's from Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh, he's a Northern. So really, you should be natural enemies.
Well, he had said Wilmington, Delaware. He's like, if you know where that is, I'm like, well, everybody knows now. Like, you got a famous resident.
Of course. Did he mention it? Has he ever met Joe Biden?
He did not mention if he's met him. I'm sure that any child of Delaware has eventually bumped into Joe Biden somewhere.
Yeah, if they've been on an Amtrak, for sure.
Definitely.
All right, Ryan. Well, listen, you've whetted my appetite so much. I think I'm going to put on The Life Aquatic on mute on my TV, and I think it's time to take off. Let's get to the interview.
Yeah, Kieran, tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. Well, welcome, Wally Koval, to Out of Office. We are thrilled to have you. You are one of the brains behind Accidentally Wes Anderson.
Yes, nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. Really pumped.
Of course. So for folks who don't know what Accidentally Wes Anderson is, can you just give them sort of the elevator pitch?
Sure. Yeah, we are a global community that has been around since 2017, and we explore locations that look like they may have come from a Wes Anderson film, but in fact, they're real places. And although they share the aesthetic, they very much each have their own unique, individual, and very interesting stories behind each one.
And what is like the Wes Anderson aesthetic in your mind?
That is a tough question. We have, we've had 5 years to try to hone in on that, I guess, 4 years, 5 years. And sure, there are specific characteristics that you can kind of overlay on top and say, yeah, there's a pastel color palette, or a layer of symmetry that goes along with Wes Anderson's with this level of aesthetic. But I think that there's something more to it, that you kind of know it when you see it, and it doesn't always fit inside of these buckets, and you can't necessarily pin down a specific criteria that it always matches. And I think that's what makes it so much fun and offers like this subjectivity to it, that you can find something interesting that may not fit something else that also classifies as AWA. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Probably nearly as well as Wes himself would probably be able to answer it. So tell us a bit about how the community works. You don't personally take every picture on the Instagram, right?
No.
Tell us how you sort of source your content and what goes into that.
Sure. So we have an open submission page. We receive a lot of submissions every month, probably 2,000 to 3,000 submissions every single month come through our website. And from that, my wife and partner in crime with all things AWA, Amanda, reviews every single submission that comes through. And from that, we start to explore the stories behind each one. And then we start to kind of map out what we'll be posting to the Instagram.
So you think of this as it's both like a visual, it's very exciting visually. The pictures are gorgeous and colorful, and they hit that kind of Anderson aesthetic. But then you're also telling like actual sort of longer travel tales and histories. How did you decide you wanted to bounce out the images with more of that storytelling?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the story is such an important part of everything that we do. There is, each of these buildings and structures and locations that we share, thousands of lives have been lived inside each one. And I think that there are these really interesting and special stories that we uncover with every single place if you just kind of look behind the facade. So it shares that there's more than just a pretty picture. And we try to dive in and just find one individual noted that we explore the footnotes of a location. And I thought that was really awesome, the way that they expressed that, because we don't share your typical history or your typical background. Sure, we touch on it, but in the context of, a couple hundred words or so, we try to find a bit of an anecdote of maybe an interesting individual that maybe spent some time in a location, or interesting architectural details that maybe you wouldn't find anywhere else, or maybe that's the oldest or the longest or the tallest in the world of some sort that you wouldn't necessarily know. You're captured by the visual and you say, wow, that's beautiful, or that's very interesting or very unique. But then we take you a step further and we kind of take you down this rabbit hole of something interesting that hopefully just leaves the reader and the individual who's reading it by just saying, I didn't know that. And maybe they go on to share that with a friend, or kind of just take that little bit of insight with them throughout their day.
And do you always go sort of like photo to story, or have you ever had a moment where somebody's shared with you an amazing story? You're like, gosh, can I find a photo that works for this? Or
yeah, absolutely. It started very much photo to story was 99% of the time. Now, more as we've adapted, and we now have a newsletter that we send out once every 2 weeks. That's our bulletin. And within our bulletin, we do a lot more, and on our website, we do a lot more of this longer form storytelling that maybe the photo's not perfect. It definitely still is AWA, but maybe it's not something that, would capture thousands of people's, on Instagram. But it has this insane story that has to be told. So it's kind of finding the right medium and then finding that right photo that goes along with this story. So it's been really fun to start to examine these stories from a different angle and kind of examine the overall content that we're putting out and sharing with the community, thanks to them for sharing their stories and then ultimately their photos with us as well.
Have there been specific stories that are really, inspired you or surprised you? What if something you've really learned doing this project?
Yeah. I think that what I've learned and what I've found most valuable is, we started this by having access and being super lucky and having these amazing opportunities to travel to Milan, to Tokyo, to all of these foreign places that we had never been before, and get to touch down in brand new lands and explore these cultures that we had never seen before and never experienced.
Oh, right? I miss doing this so much, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. And it's still something that, we're not able to do just yet. We're getting closer and it's really exciting and it's coming up. But, one of the things that we learned was these types of stories, this type of architecture, these types of really interesting things are all around you. And not to sound cliche or cheesy, but it doesn't matter where you are. You don't need to live in New York City. You don't need to live in Paris or Tokyo or a big city or even a place that anybody has heard of before. Amanda and I are from Wilmington, Delaware. Okay. I'm willing to bet that 99% of people, whether they're from the US or not, couldn't put their finger on Wilmington, Delaware on a map.
More and more, though, it's they have a very famous resident now, former resident.
Yes, now perhaps that's a good point.
And the Hotel DuPont, the restaurant there, is a very AWA location. I don't know if you've been.
Yes, absolutely. You're exactly right. And we have our book that came out. We have 200 locations, and one of those is Wilmington, Delaware. Part, yes, because Amanda and I are both from there, but also it's an example of the fact that you can find AWA locations, architecture, and stories literally anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be a big city. It doesn't have to be a well-known place. But we shared the story of the Opera House in Delaware, and it's an incredible structure that I had personally been to multiple times, and a friend of mine had lived across the street from for years, or down the street from for years. And until I started this project, I never looked at it in that light. So it's like this revisiting of a location as you experience it through this new lens, right? Whether that lens is the visual sense of the light hitting it just right, or like the sun just kind of in that magic hour, the wind hits you just right when you're walking by it and you see it in a new way, or you're seeing it through the lens of this new story that you did not know before. You didn't know the history of these people and potentially the haunted locations that some of them now have, and it's just, that's been one of the biggest learning experiences for me. Is travel started out as this thing that you had to go far away to find these new experiences, but through this process, through the book being released, through everything that we've all gone through over the past, now 18 months, 12 months, what have you, it's really opened our eyes even more so through this project to so much of the beauty that is around us in the least cliche way possible.
That is one of the things that I think I've really discovered during this this pandemic, because I used to travel quite a bit for work and for pleasure. And, after the pandemic, we're all at home. And so I started getting zip cars and just driving to hiking locations that I would never have gone to, and mountains and old houses and, all sorts of things that an hour away from New York City, but feels like a lifetime,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's been like one of the positives is I've really kind of explored around. I have now been to the Devil's Tree in New Jersey and some random Gilded Age mansions in Long Island. And there's just so much to do. And I was, I'm also a, born and raised on Delmarva. I'm from Salisbury, Maryland. So I know Delaware pretty well.
Sure.
And I was just down visiting my mom. We both got shots, so I got to see her for the first time in a long time. And we went for a walk down in the historic district of Salisbury, Maryland, and just so many beautiful old houses and a little park. And it's just like, people should, we've talked about this a lot on the show, but you can turn anything into a travel experience. If you have a layover and if a work, a meeting in Detroit, you can check out the museum. You can check out Motown Museum. These are the things that you can do no matter sort of where you are. There's always something to see. And so we encourage our listeners to find travel experiences in sort of unlikely places. Yeah,
I couldn't agree with that more. And I love the way that you put that, finding travel experiences in unique ways. It's like I talked to, two things. First, when you mentioned that you kind of got a zip car and went outside and into New Jersey, we were staying for the summer, we stayed in this cabin. And we're in a very small town called Kinnelon, New Jersey. And, you drive for 2 minutes and you're outside of it. I don't even know, how big it really is. But we ended up finding out that there was a church on a tiny island in the middle of a lake that was right up the street from us, that was had this these Tiffany glass windows and all of this like mosaic art inside that dated back to like, I don't even remember, the early 1900s. And nobody, it's not open to the public. You have to take a boat to get to it, like a little like rowboat.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was, and we're just at a cabin hanging out and find this out, and never would have guessed that in a million years that was around the corner. So there's just there really are so many interesting and unique things that you can find just outside your back door, no matter where you are. It's just really interesting.
So to sort of move from the nearby to the far, what are some of the adventures you've gotten to go on, as part of this project?
Sure. We have been incredibly lucky. The first adventure that we went on was to Buenos Aires and Uruguay. And Amanda and I had been to BA once before. This is back in 2017. We were going for the second time. It's the only place that we have fallen in love with enough and had the opportunity to go back twice. And on the second go round, the community was still very new and very fresh, and we'd never really gone on an adventure or trip before with them. And selfishly, I'm thinking to myself, there's 30,000 people here at the time, a huge group. That's so many people that we can reach out to and say, hey, we're going here. What should we do? Where should we go? What should we see? And ultimately, the outreach, I thought maybe we'd get 5 or 10 people, I don't know, maybe 50 that would say, you should go here, you should check this out, or I had lunch at a cafe that I thought was interesting. But the insight that we gained from the community was vast. It was just amazing, the outpouring of interesting ideas and suggestions that we received. And then a step further where people said, I'm going to be there, or I live nearby and I would love to take you around. And we ultimately got this almost like a B-side tour of BA, and then continuing on through Uruguay, thanks to, seeing this now for the second time through a completely different lens. We were lucky, and, we kind of grew from that, right? Every time we've gone on a trip, or as we like to call them, adventures, it's an evolution of our conversation with the community, and an evolution of how we travel, both personally and how we travel with the community. So that asking for suggestions, we want to go on these adventures with the community. So asking for suggestions has been a very staple part of every adventure that we go on. Without their suggestions, it's not as interesting as us just researching, right? There's, things better than anybody about Salisbury, Maryland, because you lived there and spent time there, that you wouldn't find on, we like to say we like to go beyond the top 10 list, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. There's so much gold on TripAdvisor and all those lists when you get to like the third page.
Yes.
It's like there's so many things that we did a whole episode on the strangest museums in London, and there are some wild things when you get beyond the big tourist attractions in any town.
Yeah, when we went to, we were very lucky to go to Vienna and work with their tourist board, and while we were there, yes, there are some incredible, the Albertina Museum. There's insane museums that just, are just unbelievable. But then if you go a little deeper, you find that there's a very small museum dedicated to snow globes. You find a museum that's dedicated to interesting clocks. I mean, just, it's not something that, you're going to spend the entire day exploring, although you could. But it's something that's off the beaten path, that's beyond that top 10 list, that offers a unique perspective into a collection, into a city, into a location, and just into a topic. I never knew that there was so much that went into snow globes beyond maybe some liquid mixture and fake snow. But there's a lot more than you would maybe expect.
Yeah, no, that is the kind of thing, place that you would find me. I'll have to next time I'm in Vienna. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this started off as an internet, an Instagram sort of focused project, but you've recently put out a book. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Oh my! This is like I'm looking at it right now on my desk.
It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
When I tried to buy it from you at the pop-up in New York, and you were sold out of them. So I don't have one. So
we're gonna have to get you a copy. I have a couple extra here. We'll make sure that one gets into your hands. So the book is, I can't not smile when I think about it, when I see it. This is a culmination of, years of work. We worked with 184 photographers from literally all over the world, to pull together 200 locations and deep dive into each of their backgrounds and stories and histories. We touch every single continent, including Antarctica. And we found some very obscure, unique places, but also we told some stories about places that you have definitely heard about. Buckingham Palace is included in the book, but the stories that we tell goes back to the individual who said that we explore the footnotes of a location, because we don't go into much about, the royal family or really about the architecture, but we do go into the fact that there is a full-time horological team that spends almost 36 hours winding and changing all of the clocks at daylight savings time. And
that's an amazing story.
Right? It's just,
I love that.
Super interesting stuff that we love nerding out over these fun stories that are very much human-based, but also just allow you to see a place in a new light. So we were very honored. Obviously, we had to reach out to Wes to get his approval to move forward with the project. And we were so honored that he allowed us to move forward with it. And ultimately, look, he could have quashed the whole thing at the very end. It was all his final approval, but we created this book and we sent him the final copy. And instead of just getting a sure thumbs up, it's good to go, we were incredibly honored that he actually offered to pen a few words for the forward. So it was not just the nice cherry on top for the book, but it was also just a huge stamp of approval for everything that we had been doing for the past 3 years, and a huge stamp of approval around the community as a whole. So this is, the book came out in October of last year, and I still am pinching myself that we were on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's just an unbelievable experience. And it really is a beautiful piece of printed material that I just love having on my desk and looking at every day.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous travel book, and with all the sort of unique stories and the different photographers, I think it's a really special piece. Had that been the first time that you and Wes had communicated? He must have been. You have well over 1 million followers, so I'm sure that he's been receiving your post from friends for a very long time.
That's one thing I've never asked him, is when he ever found out about it or how he heard about it. The book was definitely the first time that we had officially reached out to him to see if this was something that he would be interested in us moving forward with. Prior to that, we didn't have any real communication with him. But then again, the book, we reached out to him. The book came out in October, but the work on the book really started 2+ years prior. So, it's really, we reached out to him, I think, in 2018. Not really that long after, maybe a year after the community had started. So I'm sure that with the amount of press and everything that happened, he had heard of it, but I'm not sure when he heard about it or how he heard about it, or even what his first impressions were. So now you're giving me some fodder for when I get a chance to pick his brain at some point soon.
You also have to ask him where he keeps the painting from the Grand Budapest Hotel.
I will.
He had it custom painted. I just read a whole thing about this, and apparently he has the only one, and it is...
Get out. I didn't know that.
Yeah. See, there's so much. There's so many little things to know.
There really is. I did not know that at all.
So can I tell you my Wes Anderson New York City bumping into story?
Oh, 100%.
So I was in Williamsburg, and it was very, very late on like a Tuesday night. This is like probably 6 years ago. And I was at Maison Premiere, which if you've ever had been, it is an AWA place, you know, absolutely. And so sure enough, you know, as it approaches like 2 a.m., my friends and I are drinking those martinis and eating oysters. I look in the corner and I see Wes Anderson. And I'm like, this is the most Wes Anderson place that he could possibly be. You know, it's like, does he only appear in places like this? And he was dressed like impeccably in this like lovely quirky suit. And, you know, as New Yorkers, we don't speak to people in public. You know, you don't disturb folks. But at the end of the night, we're all sort of leaving at the same time and out in the street, and everyone's in a good mood and have been drinking and eating. And so I said to him how much I loved his films, and he was a very sweet guy. So that's my Wes Anderson story.
Wow.
The Maison Premiere.
That is a fantastic story, and what an awesome place to run into him. I mean, that place is it's beautiful, and it's incredible in and of itself. But then to see it in that sense, that's awesome. What a great story.
Yes, that's one of my favorite, like, random New York celeb stories. So I've been here 20 years. I've got a lot of them. I could do a whole podcast.
I only have a few. I've been here 13 years. I said I'd be here for 1, and now we're going on 13. And I definitely have a few myself, but not that one. I've never run into Wes in the street. That's for sure.
So, the account's going really well. The book is beautiful. What are your sort of like next steps here for AWA in the community?
Yeah, we have a lot planned for the community. We have created, look, we go on these adventures and we create, we do a ton of research and we do a lot of post-production on a lot of the video and spend this time editing it for it to go up on Instagram, and then it's gone, right? It's difficult to follow. And anytime we put up an adventure, we have people say, please save this to your highlights. And then I've gone back to the highlights and been like, well, this is not a fun way to try to re-experience or make an itinerary or try to map out a trip. So we've put together a website that is much more comprehensive. We like to call it our searchable adventurers database. And it's all of the locations that we've ever featured, all 1,400 of them or so, all mapped out, and all of the write-ups and all of the stories with city guides that we've created that essentially follow our tour through each city. And so now when you go to Vienna and you want to find that interesting museum, you can either go to our website and search Vienna, or you can go to our website and dive into one of the city guides and follow along and see the locations that we've been to, and share your own locations and share your own stories and save your favorites for kind of future adventures. So we've really put a lot of effort and thankfully a lot of donated friend time who are much better at web development and all this fun stuff that's not necessarily in our wheelhouse. And we're really just listening to the community for what they want, and that's something that they've asked for. So we're putting that together. We're doing some really significant stuff as far as our newsletter is concerned, and we're really trying to expand this into something that goes well beyond just an Instagram account, and even beyond just the beautiful coffee table book that sits on your in your living room.
That will sit in my living room.
Will sit in your living room.
So, have you ever considered doing sort of like curated tours, like with groups of folks?
Sure. Yeah, we've mentioned that a number of times, but one of the things that I find, I don't ever want to build an itinerary for anybody.
Yeah. It's such a personal thing, building a travel itinerary. Between you and we did a whole episode on traveling, picking the right travel partner. Yeah. And being able to align on itineraries when you're traveling with someone is so important, because if you want to go look at every historic house and they want to go, hang out in the casino, you're not going to have a very good time. So.
Sure. Yeah. I find that, a lot of the interesting things that happen to us and that we happen to find and happen to film and happen to take photos of ourselves, everything on the adventures we capture ourselves. And I find that the majority of those things are there's two parts to them. One of them is knowing what you're looking for and allowing yourself to see these experiences and have these experiences with like through that lens, right? Through that AWA lens. Because you could look at a building and be like, that's a building. Or you can look at a building and be like, wow, look at the symmetry in that. Look at the detail above the window and look at you can either be looking for it or not, right? But then there's another piece that when you're traveling and you're in a location, allowing yourself to be in that moment and allowing yourself time to travel. So when what I used to be, insanely itinerary oriented, and you can ask my wife for, we've been together for 13 years and we've done a lot of travel together. And it used to be like, okay, so this hour we're going here, and then 30 minutes after that, we're going to do that. And then we're going to do this, and then we're going to go over here. And that's great. And you can hit all the spots. You can see all the things. You can check all the boxes. She and I are exact opposites when it comes to that. And I remember her one time when we had a layover in Paris in between trips with friends. And we were there for like 4 or 5 days. And she said, look, let's just, as she put it, let's just Bourdain it. Let's just wander around. We'll find some cheese and wine and we'll happen upon whatever we happen upon, right? And I was like, I could not tell you how anxious I was at that time. And I was like, we're going to miss out on things. We're not going to find this stuff. We're going to miss it. And when's the next time we'll be back in Paris? We're not going to see certain locations. And she said, let's just do this. Okay, fine. And I can't tell you how much that changed my vision of travel, because us just wandering and we had 1 or 2 things instead of 20 on our day. There was no itinerary, but rather it was a couple pillars, let's say, that we wanted to make sure we saw, and the rest of it was all gravy. And the things, the alleys that we found ourselves walking down, or the tiny bars that we found ourselves perched at, or, the cafes that we just happened upon were so much more special and magical, whether they were in a top 10 list or not. I don't know, because I just experienced them. And so the evolution of the way that we have traveled is actually really interesting now that I'm thinking about it in this way, in that now what we try to do is provide ourselves that same thing. And we pick like 3 or 4 pillars of the day to go see and capture and see these things. But then, if weather permitting, obviously, we will walk miles in between a place, or even if there's not that far in between a place, we'll still allow ourselves an hour of like almost like forced travel on foot or via taxi or public transportation or whatever it is, to just happen upon stuff, see somebody opening up a shop, or just find an odd museum type situation that you never would have known, no matter how much Googling you did. So I just find that almost evolution of travel, and the way that, what we like to do is give you a handful of things and then allow you to find your own way around that city, because then those travel experiences are your own. And you don't just come back and say, look at these 5 pictures that I took that everyone else took. You now have experiences and stories and time that no one else has ever experienced in that manner, in that capacity, in that time. And that makes it what's really special about travel, is those new experiences and allowing yourself to be present in those moments at the same time. And I also have absolutely no idea how I started talking down this tangent. But
no, you know what? It really, strikes a chord with me, because Kieran on the pod, he's super a planner. He plans he's a media planner by trade. So he plans everything.
Of course.
I'm a planner, like a lightweight planner. Like I like to know kind of the big things I'm going to hit, kind of the days I'm going to do it. But I just like to leave so much time for just getting lost in a city and just walking. If it's a beautiful day, I will walk for like 4 or 5 hours and just like stumble upon parks and weird monuments and things that you would, would not even be on the 20th page of TripAdvisor.
Sure. Yeah.
And it really helps you get to see a city in a different way. I've gotten to know Mexico City really well, which is a very AWA place. I mostly got to know it from just being, spending my days just sort of walking around, having coffee and grabbing street tacos, and just exploring this massive city that every neighborhood is different. So, yeah, I think folks, I often think that when folks travel, they over plan. And they fill up every minute of the day, and they allow for no spontaneity, nothing that there won't be, not that you won't see beautiful things and it'll be amazing, but what about those little moments that you can't plan? And that's what you need to do, the walking around and the trying random places kind of thing.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. I absolutely love that. Those, the allowing for the spontaneity, I obviously take a lot of pictures and video, but I feel like I've found that has been a mechanism to almost allow myself to stumble upon things in a way, because as I'm going around, and even, I don't have any training or anything. I don't even have a really nice camera. I shoot 90% of what I do on my iPhone, and, it's not necessarily the equipment. It's seeking out whatever it is. I have my eye open for those unique experiences, and I'm not always looking where I'm going. And Amanda has made fun of me a lot for just tripping or falling or twisting my ankle running to capture a video of like a cab driving by or something. But it's almost like, yeah, I can be a little clumsy when it comes to that, but also my focus is on the experiences and the things that are happening around me, and allowing myself to kind of see them in a way that, I don't think I would really be paying attention to. And if you're not paying attention to them, then there's the potential of missing them. And if you're not paying attention to them, then you don't have that. You may miss out on finding yourself in some of those spontaneous experiences. Those things that just happen because you were there, and the world collided at a certain time, and there you are.
Exactly. Well, look, Wally, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for, stopping by the Out of Office podcast. We're going to link to everything in the show notes so folks can find you. But anything you want to say to the listeners before you go?
First off, thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to come on. This has been really fun. And look, I think that there's a lot out there that gets overlooked. There's a lot that has floated to the top, so to speak, in terms of what is on those top 10 lists and on the TripAdvisor and all of the travel websites. I think that if you can, instead of packing your day, like we were talking about before, picking 2 or 3 locations that, sure, you want to see. There's no shame in being a tourist in your own city too. I do it all the time, but picking a couple things, putting it on your list, and then ultimately allowing yourself that time to just wander and to get lost and to see the place in a new light and see that kind of beauty in a place that maybe you would have missed it before. I think there's a lot of special moments and a lot of special unique locations that may come about your day that you weren't necessarily expecting.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, first of all, before we really hit the last stop hard, I just want to say, fantastic interview. How after all these years did I not know that you have met Wes Anderson? That's insane.
It wasn't a very long meeting, but it is certainly memorable, and I feel like it's appropriate.
Did you tell him about the podcast?
It was pre-podcast, or I would have rushed to him and handed a postcard.
I mean, in my mind, there's no such thing as pre-podcast. The world began with the first ever podcast.
You might think 98 episodes in that we were, it was us. But yeah, no, there was a pre-podcast time.
I regret to say I don't believe that I've met Wes Anderson.
Really? Not even in passing.
Mm-mm. I'm even thinking through the actors. I don't think I've even met an actor who's been in a Wes Anderson movie. Maybe the chubby kid from the Boy Scouts movie.
You have had times in your life where you've sort of dressed in an accidentally Wes Anderson way. When you wore a lot of bow ties.
Sure. Yeah. Bow tie, sweater vest, man. For sure.
Yeah, so you would have been really out of central casting for Rushmore or Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, there was. I remember I felt a kinship with Rushmore, but then it was unveiled that he was he was a horrible student at school, and that really lost me.
Right. No, I was more, the bad student involved in all the extracurricular activities, and you were more than just a really good student.
I was doing both, Ryan. I was leading the extracurricular activities. All right, we've lost track. Anyway, we want to say absolutely go and follow Accidentally Wes Anderson, and thank you very much to Wally Koval for spending some time with Ryan. All right. Well, Ryan, we are here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show. It's the final segment of the show. It's where the name comes from. It's your favorite segment. It's my favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. And it's where you and I each take a time. Life can be just so busy. Even when you're in semi-quarantine, it can still be very hectic. This is a moment of rest, of respite, of sharing and meditation, where we each bring one thing, just one. It doesn't. If you bring multiple things, that's last stops, and that's not the name of this, where we each bring one thing. It could be a story, it could be a piece of gear, it could be something we read, experienced, saw, anything that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I have to ask you, as I ask you each episode, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, Kieran. So I was in your hometown a couple weekends ago now, Hartford, Connecticut.
I mean, again, I grew up in Wallingford, Connecticut, which is adjacent to New Haven, Connecticut, which is Hartford is the other city. Hartford's the city that growing up I would go to on school trips to go to Mark Twain's house. And then once every 3 years, my dad would get hockey tickets to the Hartford Whalers, the only professional sports team that Connecticut had. And it's not
at the time. They have more. They have one now. They have like another team.
No, they don't.
They have some kind of stadium there.
They have. Is it a Yukon stadium?
It might be.
I think that's not
that's not professional.
Sport. No, but Yukon is very good on.
They're very good.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah. I mean, we have no
idea. Yeah.
No, I'm more of a good speed opera house man, where they put on musicals. First place Annie ever got performed.
Right, but Hartford it's like the Dunkin' Donuts Stadium.
Now, Ryan, isn't that in Providence, the Dunkin' Donuts Stadium?
No, I'm sure. Dunkin' Donuts.
There's a lot of Dunkin' Donuts in Connecticut. Grew up drinking Dunkin' Donuts.
Hartford, Connecticut.
Well, you're kind of guiding Google by putting that in there. You really should be searching for Dunkin' Donuts Stadium.
It's been a long day. It's a minor league baseball, Dunkin' Donuts Park. It's a minor league baseball team, home of the Hartford Yard Goats.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah. So you as a kid, you didn't hit the old Hartford Yard Goats.
I don't believe that the Yard Goats were there.
Yeah.
Inaugural season 2017. So no. This is
Let's look. If you ever want to meet up in Hartford, check out a Yard Goats game.
Sure.
I am totally down. But you know who is from Hartford?
Who's from Hartford? Mark Twain's house is there.
Well, yes, but he's not from Hartford, right?
No, he's from Missouri.
Famously not.
Yeah. Who's from Hartford?
Frederick Olmsted.
Oh my God! Who we talk about all every other episode.
The guy born in Hartford, and buried in Hartford. Which is it's a worse thing to happen to you. But
imagine the pressure of being the groundskeeper at the cemetery.
Yeah, well, it's actually a funny story because when we were there, someone had said to us that Olmsted's buried there, and so not Googling accurately, I just assumed it was like this old cemetery that was like the main one.
Sure.
And so we went, and it turns out that Olmsted wasn't buried there, but another son of Hartford, J.P. Morgan, was buried there. So we went to saw J.P. Morgan's grave, which people, I think, ironically put money on. Like just leave like pennies and nickels and dimes.
That's funny.
Yeah, just in case. I'm like, of all the things that J.P. Morgan needs, wherever he is, I doubt it is your change.
So hold on, was Olmsted not buried in Hartford at all?
No, he is just a different cemetery. So reason to go back. But Olmsted, when you're touring these old houses, when you're in steeped in Hartford history, like I was for that weekend, Olmsted comes up a lot because obviously he was born there. Super proud that he came there. People who worked with him, helped to do like make the rose garden there and everything. So Olmsted's like a character around town. And, over the last, year or so, we've been talking so much about Olmsted and the New York episode and the Boston episode.
You can visit his studio up here outside Boston. Yeah,
he's everywhere. So I figure, I don't really know a lot about his life outside of like his great work. So picked up a biography by this guy named Justin Martin.
You called a whole biography of him?
Yeah, I'm listening to it on Audible.
Okay, all right.
Which still counts. But it's called Genius of Place, and it is about Olmsted. And I'm only a few chapters in, but he's already had like a sea. He was like he wanted to be like a seafarer for a while, and then he did it once, and it was like the worst experience. He almost died and drowned, and he couldn't eat the food, and it was just like a miserable experience. So then he was like. Then his dad bought him like a farm in Connecticut, and that was sort of a failure. And so right now his dad just bought him a farm in Staten Island. So he's like in his mid to late 20s and still hasn't even begun to do the thing that he will become world famous for, becoming, being the best landscape architect ever, essentially, right?
This sounds like a future guest to me, this author.
Yeah, I think Olmsted deserves an episode.
Absolutely. Hopefully, I'm sure he visited many of Olmsted's great parks, and maybe that could be a dual interview. That'd be very interesting.
I know. So, really enjoying it. It is well read. In fact, it's a little performy, the guy who's reading it. So that's sort of fun. I don't mind that.
This leaf is just perfect for Central Park.
But he told his father that he would never live anywhere but Connecticut. And then on his trip to Staten Island, he writes to him and says, "I found the most beautiful farm. I was so wrong about Connecticut."
That's wow. Funny. Yeah, that is very funny.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to finishing it. And you're right. We should reach out to Justin and see if he want to come on the pod and talk about Olmsted and his work.
Well, that absolutely. I think that this sounds fascinating, and I'm definitely gonna. I want to check in when you finish the book. If you could bring 5 Olmsted facts that you want to share with the audience, I think that'd be a great way to kick off a future episode.
Oh, most definitely. Happy to do that. Now, do you have a last stop this week, Kieran? I know sometimes you don't come prepared.
I've always come prepared, and I absolutely do. And this is Rick Steves related, but it is not a quest for Rick Steves. Okay, as you know, we're coming up to the 100th episode. This is episode number 98, so we only have 2 more episodes before the big shebang. And one of my hooks for trying to get Rick Steves on the show was saying 100 episodes. Still trying to figure out whether it could ever happen. And as a result, I've been spending a lot of time on ricksteves.com. And I discovered that Rick Steves, and you just know this if you're following him on social media as well, he every Monday night is doing something called Rick Steves Monday Night Travel Party. And at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Pacific. So he does 2 different hours. He's doing like a live Zoom show where he gets dinner from some European cuisine near where he lives. And from his home, he broadcasts, he puts up a slideshow, and he tells stories about his many years building his company, visiting Europe, and he just transports you away. And it had always been kind of on my mind. And this past Monday night, I was sitting on the couch. I happened to look at Instagram and I remembered, oh my God, Rick Steves is live right now. So you got to go pre-register, and it says they fill up fast. So I wasn't hopeful that I would get on, but I got on and I listened to a full hour. I watched the full hour of An Irreverent History of Rick Steves. And Ryan, blew me away. Had all these vintage photos of when he started the company. Turns out he started his career by if you sold enough people onto a tour bus for a Europe tour, they would let you, the person who convinced all those people, to come on the tour for free. So he didn't even own the company. He just tagged along on these bus tours where he, convinced 8 rubes to sign up, just because he had such a passion for getting to Europe.
That sounds so fun. How come we've never done anything like that?
Let me tell you, it was a different time. And then he was leading group tours, and it was just like him in a minivan with 8 people in the back. And they were just backpacking, staying at hostels, picnic lunches. I mean, it was a very romantic vision. And I think it's, we all know what Rick Steves is today, this kind of fatherly, very, he's a very comfortable presence. But back then he was kind of this scruffy hippie from the Northwest. And, he was like a young stoner a bit. He was a young stoner. And today he's an old stoner. He's a very proud advocate for marijuana. And I'm happy to say that they record these sessions and they are available on his website. So this one I really highly recommend. And they've got a couple more coming up. You got Europe's Natural Wonders, Rick's Dream Vacation, a birthday celebration, Scandinavian favorites. These are fantastic and a really special gift. So, I think we had a lot of special things coming online early in the pandemic when everyone was still, the novelty was still there of us all being stuck at home. He has really kept this alive, and the chat was just filled with people who so appreciated his time, and I was one of them.
And didn't he just had a Sunday morning interview with another friend of the pod?
That's right. Yes. So Connor Knighton, who wrote the book Leave Only Footprints, when he visited all the national parks. He's also CBS Sunday morning correspondent. He interviewed Rick Steves, a great interview. We'll link to it in the show notes. And I want to thank Connor Knighton because he shot me a text and he said that he mentioned our podcast to Rick Steves. So, So
Rick's coming on the pod?
Another arrow in the quiver, Ryan, for delivering Rick. And I don't want to say it's going to happen, but I haven't gotten a hard no, so that means there's a chance.
Lately.
Well, I got a hard no pretty recently, but not today. Not today.
Yeah. So Kieran, what are we talking about next week?
I mean, Ryan, we've done Boston Part 1. Boston Part 2. And I'm happy to say next week we are wrapping up the Boston trilogy. I know we got everyone excited about that a couple of weeks ago, had to bump the guest. But next week we are going to be focusing on the Boston Harbor Islands, which I think are one of the most secret, wonderful places in Boston. They need to be on every tourist list, every locals list, the spectacular national park area, and out in Boston Harbor. So we're going to talk about the wonders of the harbor, the history of the harbor, and really give you a great big finale to the Boston trilogy.
I am so excited to hear this, and I have not been to these islands, so I'm hoping
when you come up, we're gonna take a boat out to Spectacle Island.
Spectacle Island.
Yeah, and you know why? Shaped like a pair of spectacles. True story.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Oh, brother.
Isn't that good? Isn't that good? Well, until Boston Harbor, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Bill Murray is my favorite Wes Anderson actor, though.
Oh, I mean, it's hard to compete with him. Though I like Jason Schwartzman a lot.
I like Jason Schwartzman a lot, too. Yeah, but Bill Murray, I mean, everything the guy does is iconic.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a listener.
Oh, most definitely.